So firstly, sorry for the low video quality. I got a GoPro 9 and everything, but it's just running it through OBS on Windows. It just does not look very good, so yeah. But I'll be in a small window sometimes, so you won't notice the terrible quality then. But anyways, so I'm just going to talk about different things throughout the ZPF soundtrack that stuck with me, like fun sounds I figured out, like mistakes I made that turned out to be cooler than anything I could have done intentionally, the crazy power of the FM synthesis chip in the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, mistakes, screw-ups, like weird little mementos like that I have from the process of writing the soundtrack. Okay, so the first one I'm looking at is a song called Smooth Serration, which is this thing. So the crazy thing about this one is it was a really fun one to make. I think it was one of the first times I managed to get a really big sound, that was cooler than I thought I could pull off, like just that introductory is very big and, wide and interesting sounding, and I was really happy with that. I didn't write it in a very efficient way. That's stuff that I learned as I was going, much later. At the time, I was so new to this, to writing stuff for actual game files, where you have to be cognizant of the amount of size that the songs will take up and stuff. I did things in kind of a very luxurious and inefficient, uneconomical way, where the more little written commands, every little thing you write in here, all these commands that mean what note is triggered, what the volume of the note is, effects where like you make the note wobble or fade out or fade in or slide from one note to another. All those things that are written in take up a little bit more bits and bytes of data. So ideally, you write things in a way that takes up the least amount of space and you have the least amount of written crap throughout this file. Also, I did everything with drums samples. So yeah, for instance, like the channel 6 here, those are drum samples. They're like wave file drum samples. And those I didn't know when I began, but that's a very uneconomical way to do things. You can make most of those sounds pretty much with FM synthesis, the like generative tools that are built into the sound chip. For instance, on channel 5 is this like little percussive hi-hat thing. Oh, and it has some other, like staticky stuff like that. And, that could be a sample. That could be a hi-hat sample, but that's actually being synthesized with math by the sound chip itself. So this stuff takes up way less space than these samples do. And they tend to sound brighter and cleaner and crisper, and you have a lot more control over them. But I was just so used to working with drum samples and stuff in a traditional music production background, making beats and stuff, like you typically just, pull up a sample of a kick drum, a snare drum, sounds really big and huge, but this kind of has a backfiring effect of like, not only does it take up a ton of space, but because of the quality crushing that happens, by the time it ends up on the actual cartridge, it reduces how good they sound anyways. Like they end up sounding very dull and kind of crushed down. The sample rate and the bit depth is reduced quite a bit. And so, originally it might have sounded a lot better, but it ends up being pretty thin sounding. So you kind of get the worst of both worlds. But that's how I wrote the songs. When I tried to go through and maybe change them to be all FM drums, it just didn't have the same impact. It's like I wrote the songs around them being samples. So at that point, I just kind of had to roll with it and try to make do. But yeah. So anyways, the reason I brought this song up is because this originally had a really distorted, weird sort of chorus to it that is totally not on the soundtrack. I just ended up ditching it. I remember struggling when trying to finalize the songs for the game. I remember like fighting for hours and hours trying to make this part work, and fit somehow. But anyways, so like leading up to it, okay, so it's right after this. But then it just slams right back into that part, I don't know. Maybe you let me know if you think it sounds better than the way I left it, but in the album. But I just couldn't make that make sense. Like it's very kind of out of nowhere, Like I do like it on its own a lot. Like it's a very dramatic sounding, intense, kind of heavy thing, But going back into that part was just so abrupt and weird. I couldn't make it make sense. So in the end, I just had to lose it. So yeah, that's one of those things where you write a ton of stuff in the beginning of working on a game, and you don't necessarily know if it fits, if it's going to fit, if it's going to have a place in the game. But it's always better to have too much than too little. But yeah, you get to these weird moments where you have to jettison something, and so yeah, that was a little part I really liked it on its own, but just had to lose it, and I was like, man, no one's ever gonna hear this, so this is the time to share it. So this song is called Speed Freak. It's a really crazy fast one. So yeah, a lot going on in this one. This is definitely one where I kind of one of those lightning in a bottle sort of moments, where you just stumble over the right combination of sounds and feelings and ideas. You kind of discover some tricks. I think one of the first things I really figured out that I liked was this really tight dun, 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 guitar thing. Which sounds a lot weaker by itself, doesn't it? That's a perfect example of a lot of what sounds amazing about FM and chiptune in general. What sounds good and full and thick is a smoke and mirrors, sleight of hand kind of thing, of like a combination of everything working together. Everything can't be doing exactly the same thing stacked on top of one another, or else there's no variety. So it's kind of this weird thing where each channel, each instrument is just doing just enough different from one another to kind of have to sound like a band that's grooving together, and not like each instrument's not hitting the same exact notes. If that probably doesn't make any sense, but sounds pretty weak by itself. But when you turn everything on, it sounds a lot cooler. So one of the big things about it is this channel number 1, which is a noise cymbal, but it also doubles as kind of a reinforcing bass sound. So this is kind of a big aha moment for me. So by itself, so when you can hear it with the drum, it's kind of to get the rhythm with it. So if you're listening on phone speakers or something, probably all you hear right now is just white noise like that, which that's part of it. Like part of it is the cymbal, the crash cymbal noise sound. So that's adding a kind of layer to the guitar. It gives it the illusion of something that sounds like a distorted guitar. Because if you take that away, it sounds a lot more cheesy, right? And so you add them together. So if you're listening on anything with more frequencies to it than like an iPhone speaker, whatever, you can hear that it's got like a complementary bass line in it as well. So that instrument is like static and bass at the same time. Because if you listen to just the dedicated bass sound, which is but you put them together, it all just kind of jams together. Like, it's not really an equivalent to reality. There's no like cymbal and bass instrument that works together, but it's just one of those weird tricks you can work with in this very limiting environment. So when you add those things together, it creates a pretty cool sound. Then you add the drums to it. Then the little melodic instruments over here. This song has like arguably way too many sections to it, but it's one of the few where I just let myself go nuts. Like, you know, this part leads into this, then into this. It's like from part A to B to A to F, G, H, you know, so eventually comes back around. It's like one of the longest songs of the album. Yeah, also the tight volume controls on the guitar sound, that like, the fact that it's so stops and starts so tight. You can turn notes on and off in this program. Well, like with off, but that often there will still be a little bit of a decay where the note dies out. If you really want something to instantly start and stop and go from like that, kind of juggling the volume between like 90% full, 78, and 0, back and forth, 0, like that, super fast. And you're able to do that in the middle of notes, you know, like while the note is still ringing out, you're able to start and stop it. As opposed to just triggering the note over and over and over, you just get a different sound. It gives it a different kind of character. Because every time you start the note over, it may have a sharpness or something at the beginning of it that would sound cheesy if you were like triggering it over and over and over like that. So this just gives it an interesting sound. With it like worked really well. I don't know if I went into it intentionally to do that, or if I just like, you know, said, damn it, the notes won't cut off quickly enough when I use the off command. How do I make it start and stop quicker? And so I was like, I'll just jam the volume knob up and down. So in the end of the song, it finally comes back around, and I for some reason wanted to do a ludicrous like solo at the end, like a Nintendo sort of sounding solo on top of all the Sega madness. Yeah, so. Yeah, that was really fun to write. It's crazy that channel 1, that bass cymbal thing, it's crazy how much it adds to the song. Because like if you play it without it, you know, still, I mean, it still sounds okay, but it's like, it's missing some chaotic edge to it, and when you add that, I've even got a second one on channel 5 here, so just to be completely ridiculous and overkill. Like, because I wanted it on a different note, or I wanted it an octave lower than the one that's jumping around all over the place. Sometimes I've just added one that's just sustained at a lower note. Yeah, just to kind of fill it in, give it a pad at the bottom. But yeah, you can see when you add that in, it adds this extra layer of chaos and gnarliness to it that if you just took channels 5 and 1 out, it's so cool, but it's, you know, it's missing something. So it's crazy how much white noise and little bass adds, you know. Yeah, so that was a really fun one to do. So this one's called Plexijazz. It's this one. So this is a case of a song coming pretty much entirely from just stumbling over a cool sound that I liked. I was messing around with these sort of melodic PSG like pulse wave channels, which are making this the main sort of sound from it. Right. So I was messing around with a patch there in the arpeggio maker, where you can like program in a sequence of notes to make it like play all over the place. And so I just kind of stumbled over this like combination of it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. It's playing 5 notes down like that over and over and over. But then I also had the volume up here set so it gives it this like rhythmic feel at the same time. So it's kind of like two things, like the 5-note pattern is, but then the volume is, it creates that weird juxtaposition. And then I pretty much just hit 2 notes at the same time, I think. Like that. And if you play them even slightly out of sync, it sounds like chaos. So if I'm triggering this on the typing keyboard, I'm having to like make sure to hit it exactly together. Yeah, that was pretty much. I just loved that sound, and it just I could immediately start to imagine other elements of the song, and then other places I kind of played with the same idea, just without the arpeggio. So like, so this is okay. 1 note. It's just the volume loop that we did on the other instrument, but then if you like. You gotta get it right on time. Anyway, you get the idea. You just like, I do that on a lot of songs of this album, just to make, it just was an interesting kind of element to me when you have the pulse wave channels having a looping like volume graph right here, volume envelope, to where the notes loop, and then as you play and stagger notes and trigger them at different times, it creates this weird little like shuffling rhythm that can play underneath all the FM channels over here on the left. And so it just gives it this extra little rhythmic kind of texture to things. And yeah, pretty much just... And right there... I tricked it to go the other direction. And I could just immediately hear that as kind of a beat, like, you know. Yeah, that was really satisfying when I figured that out. So I've got that sound, that big thing spread across 3 channels, I think. Not 2, and then the third. Yeah, that was sometimes when you finally get a part dialed in and like you can hear it where it's progressing and the tension and resolution of it. God, it's so satisfying to orchestrate it and get it all dialed in. It's just, that was a really special moment. Yeah, that last like that. So fun. And yeah, it's also a case of like there's arguably too much going on in the pulse wave channels over here, but I'm just kind of ducking them, hiding them beneath everything a little bit, because when I took them away, it kind of lost something. But if you really hone in on this, so yeah, there's a lot happening in there. But when you add it all together, doesn't bother me as much. So yeah, that was a fun one. This one is called Abstress. I don't immediately remember off the top of my head if this is in the game anywhere, but it's definitely on the soundtrack and stuff. But yeah, it's a creepy, sort of atmospheric, cinematic song. You get the gist of it there. Yeah, I think the beginning part was inspired kind of by, of course, you know, things like Select Ambient Works by Aphex Twin and things like that, but also certain musicals. I'm not like a big musical expert, but some of the coolest ones were things where there were atonal vocal parts. And I think it was something from, oddly enough, from Jesus Christ Superstar, where there was just this like chorus of people arguing, and this and this like really weird, abstract, kind of scary sounding melody that was very disconcerting. And so I wanted to try to capture something like that with these, and it was. So that's why it sounds strange like that. And then, yeah, the weird voices in this, it's a fun example of, I got clips from a Speak and Spell toy that had been circuit bent to where it sounded really demonic and strange, and I made some recordings of that and spliced them up and pitched them down and messed with them and stuff, and so you get these... Of course, that's it trying to say because. And yeah, just triggering them in a rhythmic way. Just gave it this really scary, weird sound to me. Especially since you don't typically listening to Sega Genesis, Mega Drive chiptune stuff, you're not going to expect like vocal samples or anything. Hearing drum samples is enough of a... Usually people do FM drums and stuff. That's the more wise thing they do. So, to have like weird voices in it was pretty unexpected, I thought. So, yeah, but mostly I was just trying to do something creepy sounding. I was like, I wanted an atmospheric, surprising, weird sound. And yeah, the strange vocal samples was like, God, that'd be a great compliment to this really soothing yet disconcerting sounding synth that's plinking in the beginning. But yeah, not a ton to say about this one. It was just a neat outlier. I don't think it's in the game at this point. But yeah, it was a cool one. So this one is it's called Mighty Terror, and or the Goblin King, I think is what it was originally was. So this is definitely a boss fight song, as you could probably tell. So this is pretty short. Let's just listen to the whole thing. Yeah, that is one of my favorites, man. God. Perfect example of the crazy, gnarly sounds that you can create with this chip. Yeah. This relates to a boss, pretty popular image for the game with the big circular saw blades on the front of it. And so, yeah, I think the cue I got for it was like, have something where it's like these saw blades bursting through the wall of a chapel or something. So it's like bursting in like that. Yeah. Yeah, so some of those crazy guitar sounds, picking those apart. Yeah, so these are pretty massive sounding. Like on Speed Freak, I had that fast guitar that sounded pretty weak by itself, but I think by this point I started to uncover some thicker, nastier guitar sounds. So yeah, just even by itself, that's huge sounding. So it's a higher octave, and they're panned left and right to make it nice and you know, cinematic. Yeah, then you get this. It's a favorite sound of mine. It's kind of like a guitar, kind of like a percussion or cymbal sound. Is like crazy noise. Okay, so what did I do here? Yeah. Okay, so slowly bending upwards. Right. So one is panned, I think, to the right, one to the left. One's panning, one is pitching up an octave or whatever. It's gradually bending up. One's going down. So you get this combined effect of like, and the other tracks are doing what here? Hitting a like a terrible, yeah. Yeah, G. That's not the right sound, obviously. So whenever you have two, it's kind of a recurring theme with me. That's something later we'll talk about too on a different song called Devil Pulse, where that's a minor second, just like a half step apart. When you put those two notes together, it sounds horrible. But if you do it with two different sounds, like this. Whoops, sorry. Like that. And you spread them to different channels, it helps make it like more of a tension as opposed to pure, just like god-awful that. But so it's giving this push and pull sensation of like, you really want it to resolve to dun, and then you add those two bending tracks on top of it, and then so when it finally resolves, man, it feels great. And again, some tension here. Right, yeah, right there, B and C. So same kind of thing going on there with whoops. Let's see. Sounds horrible by itself, but in the context of a lot of bending and sliding around because I wanted that effect of something with saw blades, you know, pulling like this tug of war with you and just ripping and sawing through stuff. So, you know, that sound that gives me such a feeling of being a buzzsaw, buzzy sound. Yeah, then I got a slap bass kind of backing it up. I don't even remember what I'm doing on some of these channels. That's cool. Yeah, so that part of the song just provides some drama, some emotional movement compared to the terror intro. Yeah, just insane drum fills, just craziness. Yeah, man. I just find myself playing it just because it's a fun. It's really short song. When you get a good, I didn't feel like it needed another bridge or whatever. Even though it, some great sounds, a good fertile ground to make something else with it. I don't know, especially since the fact it was a boss encounter song. It's not going to be some long thing. It's going to last for a pretty short amount of time. So yeah, just that A-B of like terror and buzzsaw with this like kind of ripping emotional metal track to as a counterpart to it. It felt like enough, and yeah, I find it very listenable despite it being very aggressive and nasty sounding. So yeah, that's one of my favorites. This one's called Aphelion Reach. Was used in some of the earliest like videos I put out about the game, like the teaser originally. At least parts of this should sound very familiar. Yeah, so this is one I worked on for a long time. It's kind of a patchwork of a bunch of different things. It's kind of as messy of a song as my comments are going to be about it. Like I don't have a really concise message about this one, but I think the thing I started with in the song was, this thing. So that idea was anyone who's familiar with classical music and Bach should, probably sounds kind of familiar to that. It's definitely what it was inspired by. Okay, so I think I started playing this on the piano. So that's the right hand, but then the left hand is kind of doing an opposite of that, a mirror sort of thing. So gets, you know, it's not an exact mirror throughout. If the left hand eventually gets to be a little different. Whoops. Just to kind of mix it up and give it some variety, but so then that's a that's kind of a distorted guitar thing, mirroring, doing the same thing as the right hand. Drums, percussion stuff there. So I wrote that part, kind of this moody classical part, right? But then I think I went back and wrote this thing. Yeah, just this kind of cyberpunk, you know, dark techno classical sounding thing. Yeah, did some fun stuff here with. So I'm triggering this big kind of synth pad sound. Yeah. Let's see. And that's what it normally does. But you see, as the note is held out here, there's all these things, 16, 10, 11, 12. What I'm doing is basically modulating one of the operators that's in the synth. So the synth noise is made up of 4 different little sound generators, right? They all kind of intersect and they affect one another in different ways. That's how FM synthesis works. But, you know, if you turn up the volume on one of these things, it typically will like, it'll like, you know, give it some texture and timbre or distortion. It kind of depends. And so in this case, I'm turning that knob up and down a little bit as it goes. So it gets that sound. And then I think yeah, I've got it duplicated or something, or a different note. No, yeah, it's a chord. Okay, and that's a case where I'm doing musically timed panning just for some flavor. So this, on this second channel, just on a kind of quarter note basis, every note, this 8, 10, 8, 0, 8, 1, that's panning left, center, right, center. By itself, sounds kind of whack, but you know, when you blend it in with everything else, and there's so many tracks kind of overlaying, it just adds this a bit of movement. And it doesn't sound that weird, but you know, when it's mixed in with everything else. And this is another song that's like, this is a really cool sound here. Perfect example of another one of the weird things this chip can do. Yeah. So this is another thing where I'm modulating one of these operators, right, with this channel. And I pulled this up. It was like a bass patch at first, like a slap bass. That's pretty much what it sounds like. But then I was messing with one of these operators. So if this is 27, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Okay. It was like a bass patch, but then I noticed if I turn that thing up high enough, it became a distorted, almost drum sound or something. And so if I modulated that value musically, like you could add this like and turn it from a mostly bass melodic instrument into a textural, distorted, weird noise. And then I just went ADD and changed to hi-hats there. But like just that little cool bass riff there. I've come back and listened to that by itself. I'm like, man, that's so cool. That could have gone off in its own little way, but you almost don't really even hear that when it's mixed in with. Because what you're really hearing usually is that stronger theme. So when you add it back in, yeah, it's like barely in there. It's just a case of, again, I don't have a great point I'm making. It's just like, man, there's some cool little ideas I had at different moments when I was working on one part or another of the song, and I'm surprised that both is sitting in the mix beneath other things. Also, that I'm surprised I didn't do more with it. But it's just the weird kind of disjointed way songs come about sometimes. Like that probably didn't need to be its own little funky like bass noodling riff by itself. It probably could have been simplified, but it doesn't super hurt it either. You don't even really notice it. So it's just kind of a little Easter egg for myself or for anyone who's listening insanely close, I guess. They're little nuggets like that, where you're like, oh, it's a cool detail, like that's at least how I justify the ADD way of messy way of writing things that I do. So it's messy, weird, but yeah, I'm happy that I went to all those strange places, even if you can't hear some of them. Yeah, so this last one is called Devil Pulse, another fun, distorted, crazy one that I had a lot of fun with. Yeah, so part of the inspiration for this was like me and my brother grew up playing Nintendo games with our cousins, both huge game nerds and stuff our whole lives. And so, of course, like Mega Man 2 is one of our, classic inspiration kind of childhood games that like made us be interested in music making in general, much less game music, and wanting to make games and stuff. And so I just remember hearing him talk one day when we were talking about like great game songs. When I was working on ZPF, he was talking about Heat Man, the theme for Mega Man 2, and how he could listen to that like forever, just that basic chugging riff. Even though there's not a ton to the song, it's pretty simple, but like that riff was so metal and cool, and it was so evocative of the feeling of the heat and the bubbling like intensity of the stage. And so I kind of it just like inspired me to like, I want to write something like that, some kind of chugging continuous like thing like that. And so that's where that basic riff came from, like that's what it was inspired by, like, Also, Pantera, anything like, metal riffs chugging along like that. And this is also using that. It's using that same slap bass that can be that thing we were just talking about in Aphelion Reach. It's using that to the same effect here, like yeah. Man, such a fun interlude there. So yeah, that's another we've talked a lot about the dissonance, of like two notes that are right next to one another. Yet again, I think this is maybe the first place in the process of working on the album where that happened, where and possibly the weirdest version of it, and it's so weird that it worked out so well, where I was playing with this bass sound, a pretty nice, thick slap bass sound like that, and I accidentally, it was like had an actual, musical keyboard with me, and I like blanged those two keys that are right next to one another. But also shout out to Future Breed Machine by Meshuggah, the intro to that song. That's totally common song. I'm sure everyone will know by heart. But yeah, the intro to that song has a minor second like that, and this crazy noise. But this was like just a pure accident, and I just thought that was such a funky, weird sound. And it's just so crazy that a minor second, like the ultimate dissonant, wrong thing to do, could end up sounding something that stimulated me like that. It's like, just ridiculous that it turned out this way. Also, I don't know why, it was just so funny to me that I made the drums so so stupidly short. It's just really funny sound to me. Yeah. Well, that's my big messy batch of comments about some moments that stuck with me throughout writing the soundtrack. Hope you guys liked it. There's going to be all of this, of course, and way more on the soundtrack. The CD version especially is going to have like tons of extra things that are not on the vinyl, to make it a good complement for each other, stuff that is not in the game, stuff that didn't even make it to being a Sega song, stuff that I just wrote on the piano or in other programs just to try to show some extra ideas and stuff that were part of the process. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, okay? Bye.